It's the Awake Space Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers, your host, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Grab your coffee, get your matcha, get your tea, get your hot cocoa. You can put a little something, something in it if you're not driving. And whether we are driving to work or sitting cozy at home or taking the kids to school or folding laundry or getting ready to take the garbage out or doing our hot girl or hot guy walk, whatever it is we're doing, we're going to do it together today. Big energy to round out the month. Surprise, surprise. If you took my 2025 year ahead seminar, then you know this is a heck of a year, but no reason to not see the silver linings. And I'm covering a lot of that this episode. I have a wonderful guest with me this week, Nasser Al Nama from Qatar, talking about how he created the solution he was seeking because he felt like an outsider in his own country and wanted to bring like-hearted people together in business to create collaborations and solutions. And I just thought, what a perfect person to have on the podcast as we wind up January. I've known Nasser since 2016. He's a remarkable man. I knew him as a young man, and it's really beautiful to watch people grow and mature. So I've got Nasser on here, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's a long interview, but it's not the whole interview. The full interview will be up on Patreon this week. But it was so beautiful. I couldn't cut it all the way down. But anyway, I hope you enjoy. All right, let's get on with the show. All right, I told you that 2025 was going to be a bit volatile. And for all of the people who like to say that I'm fear-mongering, understand that sometimes I'm understating. It's an interesting year, and it is a year of disruptive change. Okay, that would be the way I'd describe it. And there's going to be more on the way, but it isn't a time to hold your breath or spiral. I know it's a lot, but one of the things I've noticed, because I deal with a lot of people all of the time, is that there is an almost addiction to being over-informed. Okay. And that means people talking about the same thing and the same problem over and over and over and over. And it does not take a genius to point out a problem. Okay. I know people like, Elon like to point out what's wrong. It takes a genius to find a solution. And we're in luck. We're about to hit some energy. In fact, tonight, Monday night, January 27th of 2025, where you can find some real genius solutions. Maybe not to the bigger world problems. Okay, because those are bigger than one person. Okay, even if they seem to be caused by a very few people. All right. But you can find solutions in your personal life and how you manage your personal energy. And that's super, super important. Okay. Resistance to change gets in the way of finding solutions. And what do I mean by that? Because we're in a position where a lot of people are saying resist, resist, resist. And there are certain kinds of resistance that build strength. And there's another kind of resistance that all it does is cause pain. And I'm not saying surrender in a way of like, I give up, nothing I can do, I'm going to go into apathy. But there is a time where you can notice this is the time we are in. And then here are the solutions for the moment. Now, as an individual, you can only look at the solutions in your own life and in your sphere of influence. Okay. And I'm not talking about, social media influencers, but if I, as a social media influencer of a kind, I don't really see myself as an influencer, but there might be those who do see me that way. I look at what are the solutions that can be brought to the table during a time of disruption, because we are in very disruptive energy through most of the year. We get a little reprieve in September for like a couple days. It's a wild year. It is. But in that is opportunity as well. All right. There's always opportunity when there is disruption. And not all disruption is bad. There are bad things happening in this world. And for many people, this is the first time they've become aware of long-standing problems. Okay. And so they're pointing it out. Oh my God, that's a problem. Yet every problem has a solution. And I blame how we learn math. We always talk about, the problem to solve for X. That's a much smarter way of saying it than figure out the math problem. Because a problem is just a problem. It's unanswerable when we're in a panic. Okay. And when I say tonight, January 27th, and into the 28th, we have an immensely huge opportunity to allow solutions to find us in the midst of disruption, in the midst of chaos, in the midst of turmoil, in the midst of change. I ain't kidding, because Mercury is about to move into Aquarius tonight, Monday, 27th of January of 2025. And it will be immediately in a conjunction with Pluto, right? In an approaching conjunction. And it will be conjunct Pluto. That means sitting right next to it, sitting on its lap. Did Mercury giving Pluto a lap dance? On the 28th. Mercury is our thoughts, our communication. Okay. And I'm not talking about your natal Mercury. I'm talking about the current planetary transit. And so imagine that when Mercury is in a sign, this is the frequency and the wavelength of thought energy. And so as Mercury shifts from the determined, standard, methodical energy of Capricorn, and it bursts into the crystalline, sharp, edgy, electrical, chilly energy of Aquarius, the mad scientist, the eureka energy, the solution oriented, the collaborative energy, the sounding board energy of Aquarius as it moves towards the planet of transformation and forced evolution that can feel like destruction. It can, because when things you think matter are ending or being disrupted or, to your mind, destroyed, it can feel like that. But every ending is a beginning. Every ending is a beginning. Okay. The lower end of the spectrum of this energy is groupthink. And that is something you really want to avoid. It doesn't matter what part of the political spectrum you're on. Okay, whether you're a leftist, you're on the right, whatever. The groupthink is dangerous. It's dangerous. And so it's really important to really pay attention. Are you repeating other people's words as your own? If you're giving a warning, are you repeating something that some pundit has said and you like the sound of it, and so you use those words because it's catchy? Are you using your own thoughts? Okay. Have you critically assessed the words and what they actually mean and their intention? And I know it's not convenient to sit back, take a breath, and go, how can I be thoughtful with this? groupthink is part of a problem because people get rallying cries and chants, and those can be motivating for about 3 seconds, but they don't solve a problem. And with this energy, if you can be aware, step back, take a breath, and allow yourself to observe the thoughts that are kind of popping like popcorn and weed through them and find one that is solution oriented. It's a solving. Okay. It's not a just pointing out what is. It's I see a lot of when I go onto social media and I just go, kind of scroll through, especially like I've been on Blue Sky, which gives me, 2007, 2008 Twitter vibes. I see a lot of well-intentioned people repeating rallying cries, but not offering really any kind of solution. They're outraged, and outrage is the antithesis of organization. It makes you immune to the ability to organize. It is an organization blocker because outrage it's just impotent anger that has nowhere to go, nowhere to organize, nowhere to collaborate. It's just, I'm angry. And then it's okay to be angry. What are you going to do about it? Are you just going to sit there and let your blood pressure raise? Are you going to sit there and feel hopeless? Are you going to sit there and feel demoralized? Because if you do, then all those disruptive events that people are oh so aware of are doing exactly what they're meant to do, which is deplete your energy, to deplete your will, and to keep you in a problem thinking mindset. And as Einstein said, the same thinking that caused the problem cannot be the thinking that finds the solution. It doesn't work. Those two wavelengths of thought do not move on the same frequency. So you cannot find a solution while considering the problem. In fact, the great Jonas Salk, who was the creator of the polio vaccine during a massive crisis, a healthcare crisis in the 1950s, 1940s, 1950s, while he was trying to come up with the solution for the vaccine, he kept hitting roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And eventually he went and took a nap. That's a form of surrender. Okay. He wasn't surrendering as in giving up, but he was surrendering, trying to figure it out when he was exhausted. And he famously is reported to have woken up from that nap with the epiphany, the aha, the eureka moment that helped him create the vaccine, which saved millions of lives worldwide. Millions. My uncle had polio as a child, and he was sick for many, many years. And he was fortunate enough not to have to go into an iron lung. There are still people alive today in iron lungs who contracted polio before they had access to a vaccine in the United States. Okay. And I've seen the ravages of unchecked polio in West Africa in 1990 and 91. And I had never seen such a thing because that had been curbed, taken care of in this country, well, before I was born. It's a horrendous thing to see. And I can only imagine how difficult it was to come up with a solution when you're faced with such an egregious problem, a debilitating problem. So sometimes we have to give ourselves a respite to allow in the solution thoughts that will pop into our head. Some people call it a download. Okay. And it might feel like a download with Mercury and Aquarius. An aha. And whether that is in your personal life where you look at solutions for yourself, or it's in your communities, if you're looking to switch trajectory, if you're wanting to be more agile and adaptive, whether you're looking for something to get involved in, because one of the things I hear all the time is there's nobody like me where I live. There's nobody who thinks like me where I live. Well, I work with clients for a living. That's what I do. I do consultations. You'd be amazed at how many people are into what you're into in the area in which you live, because I can guarantee you I've had 5 clients probably from that city. If there's 5 people, there's 5 people you can hang out with. Okay. On top of Mercury moving into Aquarius and being conjunct Pluto, which on a personal level can bring in some amazingly transformative ideas that you can map out. You may not be able to take action on it yet, but you certainly map out the solution. It may not happen overnight. Everybody wants to wave a magic wand or find the potion or bippity boppity boo, instant success, or instant gratification. Life doesn't work that way. Some things take time to mature. Sometimes it takes years for an idea to mature. Okay. So as we look at Mercury conjunct Pluto, it's time to write that stuff down and write it by hand. Okay, neuroscience is proven out that those phone notes aren't as effective as you think they are. Okay, so write it down. Practice your handwriting, because it'll input more. Journal. If you don't like writing, make a photo collage. Make get out the newspapers or the flyers or whatever you got. Or go print stuff off of your computer, and make a visual representation. Okay. It's not about setting intentions. It's about getting it out of your head and manifesting it, the first step, into the writing. That's the first step, because it's revealing the thought to you on paper, because that's what manifest means. It means to reveal. Okay, so if you can write down an idea, you're revealing the thought and recording it. And that's the first step to making things happen. It's called a strategic plan. And this is great energy for planning. Okay, we may see things revealed in the outer world. There may be some big bombshell headlines around leaks or information. There might be some big events that happen. They happen. They happen. It's part of being physical. You didn't pick the wrong time to be on the planet. You picked exactly the time that you were going to be on the planet. And as the great Angela Davis said, we don't get to pick the circumstances of the struggle. Okay? We don't get to pick the circumstances of the struggle. But we do get to pick how we meet it. And this energy with Mercury conjunct Pluto on a personal level can be amazeballs. So that's a silver lining if you choose to see it. Because if all you're doing, that's what problem thinking does. If all you do is see the problems, you cannot find the solutions. And it is debilitating. It's depressing. And it wears you down. And it weakens your ability to address the changes that need to happen, whether it's pleasant or not. Okay. Now, on top of that, we got the Aquarius new moon going on, which is Lunar New Year. If you celebrate, happy Lunar New Year. Okay. And it is the year of the snake starting. And in Western culture, we're like, oh, snakes. But I did a little research, and in Asian mythology, at least associated with Lunar New Year, the snake is about transformation. Okay. And you can do your own homework on that. I am not what some people would call a Chinese astrologer or a Ming astrologer or a Batsi practitioner. I know enough to be dangerous. If you really want to know, go to Ask Auntie Amy. Ask Auntie Amy. She's a Batsi practitioner. And friend of mine. She's on TikTok, but she has a website. I'll try to get it in the show notes. She knows her stuff about this. She also has a Patreon. I'm a member of her Patreon. So she knows her stuff when it comes to feng shui and Bazi and so I would rather her explain it to you. I don't like to step into modalities I'm not an expert in. So, but in Western astrology, it's a new moon, and it's the Aquarius new moon, and it is a time for setting intentions. And it will be happening in the morning of the 29th, like early hours, like, I think around 5 something on the West Coast, around 8 something on the East Coast in the United States, and afternoon into evening, depending on what part of the world you're in, on over, across the pond. I don't like to forget my international listeners. I love you. And this is something, this energy is really good for setting intentions around being in community and how you want to meet your human obligations in community. I think a lot of times when I look in activist spaces, so many people want to be the great leader versus understanding it takes a team, and we are not in an era of the great leader. We are in an era of needing to communicate, collaborate, and play. And people who are unwilling to do so are going to have a hard time, including the type of groups we belong to. We're going to have to really reassess what community means. We're going to have to redescribe and redefine what community means for us. And each of us on an individual level, and understand what really matters, what our actual core values are, and how we can, what a real collaboration would be. And I think right now people are just used to, well, I want to be with people who think like me. And, I think there's containers and spectrums for everything. And I know there's people I can work with, and I know there's people that it's hard for me to work with. I know that working with people who are reasonably optimistic and yet still able to see the real picture is important. So pragmatists, people who understand that sometimes we fight the good fight, sometimes we retreat, and sometimes we take a breath, and sometimes we need some downtime. But people who are willing to collaborate, equal measure for measure, not people who are going to sit and skate and ride coattails, not people who are going to try to drag you forward, but people who are willing to meet you where you're at and work together. That's the type of people I like to work with, and that's how the patrons are in the Awake Space podcast. In fact, Awake Space Astrology podcast is really the Awake Space. That's what it started as. I added astrology just to kind of let people know I was talking about it, but I'm actually going back to our original name, which is the Awake Space, because you have your cup of coffee in the morning, then what you gonna do, right? I like hanging around with people who find solutions. And one of the solutions I came up with, because being on camera is not my favorite thing to do. I do it, but it's not my favorite. Love doing audio. But sitting by myself, talking and trying to interact with a bunch of comments can be hard, right? And instead of allowing that to defeat me, I realize we have so many talented people in our patrons, in the Patreon, that I invited people, if they have professional or life experience that they'd like to share with the group, to come on to do some patron only podcasts with me. And we've had some great responses on the forum. And Alicia will be getting emails out and trying to see when we're going to schedule people in. I've made the list. And man, we've got weeks of content at that point. You guys are going to be chock-a-block full of information. And these are people who work with media literacy, science, technology, medicine, gardening, food prep, psychology, from all different realms. It's very exciting to me. That's a solution. I'll have people to talk to. And then inviting we're doing a random number generator with the astrology crew to come on and do patron-only live streams and talk astrology. In fact, we just did our January meetup with the astrology crew, and it's really an astrology jam. Yeah, people come and ask me questions, but it's more conversational. And we explored and dove down rabbit holes and covered a whole lot of ground. If you couldn't be there and you're in the astrology crew, don't worry about it. We'll get the recording up. And everybody learned a lot. It was super fun, and it was a little less class, like class oriented, where it's curriculum, what have you. It's more like, hey, I've created close to 200 hours of exclusive astrological education on Patreon. And so, take advantage of that and then come ask me questions about what I actually did. Ask me about, other stuff out in the world. Sure. Why is it different or what have you? Fine. But ask me about the classes that I've created. Cause come on, guys. And so we did that, and we had good discussions, and it was great. So super fun. This new moon, and I'll cover it a little bit towards the end. This new moon is powerful for setting your intentions around innovating, causing your own disruptions in your life. And disruption, again, doesn't have to be bad. It can just be rattling the status quo, which sometimes we need to do. It could be inventive and inspiring. How do you want to be inspired? And you don't want to attach it to outer outcomes. You can't be like, I'll only be happy if this one person stops breathing. You may not be happy for a while. So you need to set your intentions within your sphere of influence. Okay. You can't manifest for other people. I know all the time I get moms, especially, but moms and dads will be worried about their adult children. I'm like, you gotta let these people live their lives. They're walking their walk. Yeah, they worry the hell out of us. I'm a mom. My kids are grown, but they have their life path. And you have to trust that. So there we go. Got a very special guest on the podcast today. Good friend of mine, good friend of the family, Nasser Al Nama from Qatar, who created a company that networks other businesses, both in Qatar and globally, to collaborate in meaningful ways. Beyond just mutually financially success, but find really good connections. And Nasser has found himself being a connector and became the solution he sought because he felt like an outlier and still does sometimes. And so he created something that he needed. And some of the best solutions we find are, we have a problem and we solve it for us. Well, you're not the only one with that problem. Okay. So he has found both business success as well as personal gratification in being the solution he seeks. And I've got an abbreviated form of the interview here on the Awake Space podcast, and the full interview is up in the Patreon. It was a hard choice in the editing because we had such a great conversation, and I think you'll just love his poetic nature, his thoughtfulness. He's a deep thinker. He's a poetic thinker. He's a self-actualizer, and I think you'll enjoy that. And of course, we're going to do our patron shout outs because the Awake Spaces podcast is sponsored by our patrons. If you've been getting ads on YouTube, it's because something's been toggled on. I don't even have my AdSense set up. Okay. And I'll say that a little differently. I haven't even set up the ability to receive anything. So, oops. We'll go fix that. But yeah, so when I think of podcasts, I don't tend to think of it being on YouTube as a podcast. I tend to think of podcast players. So I'm a little bit of a literal thinker. Whoops. We'll get that fixed. Yeah. So we'll do our patron shout outs, and going to talk a little bit about what's in the headlines from the Awake Space Astrology magazine. And then we're going to look at also, give you a little preview of what to expect come February. So this is kind of a wild and wacky time to be alive on the planet, but look for the silver linings. They're there. The silver linings are there, but you got to look for them. All right, let's get going. All right, it's time for some patron shout outs. Oh, without you guys, there is no podcast. So I want to thank you. Again, the ads on YouTube or something got to fix because I don't know why they're there. But anyway, so here's our newest patrons. We've got Bree from SD, Christine, Lisa, Skybear, Jillian, Rose, Marge, Kat, Megan, Silver Willow, Misty, Vicky, Nini or Ninny, Eva, Tara, Amy, Matthew, Becca, Rachel, Hey Yari, Erin, Deborah Lynn, Stephanie, Tiara, Erica, Slurpee, Talon, Sue, Tanya, Lisa, Denise, Jen, April, Danelle, Gina, Meredith, McKenna, Carolyn, Griselda, Miss Laura Dubs, Haley, Mama Lisa, Mouse, Brooke, Amanda, Megan, Heather, Tootie, Kim, Christy, Leslie, April, Deb Z, Marla, Gabby, Alexis, Holly, Erin, Zoe Z, Brianna, Deanne Cord 611, Mike, Danielle, Madison, Chelsea, Jennifer, Trista, Haley, Twiggy, Patricia, Isabel, Christina, Janet, Connie, Anne, Naomi, Ashton, Amanda, Lauren, Raquel, Catherine, KS, CR, Daniel, Chrissy, Valentina, Kama3, Kelly, Lindsay, Nene, Lunar, Rihanna. We'll save the next bit for another round. All right. Let's talk about what we're going to see in the outer world, and let me explain it just so it's super clear. These are possibilities that I think are mostly likely to see in the headlines and the news. The reason I talk about these is so it's less of a shock to the system, because there's a lot of shock and awe that gets played by the media. They're not for you to ruminate on or worry about or freak out about, okay? They're just not. It's just this is what I think is going to show up. So when we take a look at what's coming up over the next couple of days, we've got the moon in Capricorn. We entered Capricorn yesterday, Sunday the 26th, and it remains in Capricorn through the 28th of January. And what I wrote in the magazine, the moon in Capricorn brings the beginning of the end of a few world leaders and or governments. Now, it's global. Okay, stop putting your attention all on one person. In fact, I'm going to argue you're feeding that person. Whether it's negative energy or positive energy, he just gobbles it up. Put your attention on things you can do something about. That will do more to deplete that person. The more you rail against him, it just feeds him. Doesn't mean you pretend nothing bad is happening. I'm just saying turn your attention to what you can do something about. There's a difference. One is proactive, one is impotent. So I think we could see more big weather. I think we're going to see anywhere where there's like a coalition government could see some big failures or an issue, like a coalition falling apart. We could see a notable male in the world. Now, this could be a patriarch or a monarch or we could see somebody move along. We probably see some Navy skirmishes, Middle East, off the coast of Malaysia or Indonesia, South China Sea. We could see some sizable events when it comes to earthquakes, etc. No, California, I'm not just talking about you. There's a whole big world. We could see NATO having a crisis. We could see more military mobilizations happening globally, different countries. We could see some civil unrest in the United States. It may, there might be talk of civil war, or it may look like one is brewing. Doesn't mean it will, but again, this is all to make people worry and be afraid. If it happens to be in your local area, then, do the best you can to secure yourself. We could see an international incident in the finance world or with trade organizations or agreements. Let's see. Issues on borders in general, and that could be the US-Mexico border, India-Pakistan, India-China, Afghanistan, of course, Jordan, Israel, Syria, that area. We could see a big celebrity scandal or breakup. We could see a CEO or CFO removed from position by board of directors. We could see an accident on a mountain, and we're definitely looking at landslides, mudslides, rock falls, and sinkholes. And there could be some explosions as well. I want to remind you that the transits are global. Accidents and political upheaval can also be big storms or natural events, and vice versa. The moon slides into Aquarius on the 28th. And it'll be interesting because Mercury will be conjunct Pluto. And as the moon moves into Aquarius, that's energizing that. And I think we could see big windstorms just come out kind of out of nowhere. I think we could hear more about icebergs, melting glaciers, sea ice, and climate crisis. We could see the temperatures like dipping or jumping depending on where you live. So if it's been cooler, it might warm up real fast. If it's been hot, it may cool down real fast. We could see explosions of all kinds. Those could be accidental or man-made. We could see a big air accident, and this could be my thoughts on it is it could be a plane shot down or a helicopter crash, military. If it's commercial, it would probably be mechanical. Banking crisis, issues with payment gateways or hacking, ransomware, things like that. And that's been really common, so we could hear about power plants, chemical plants, accidents, explosions. It could be like maybe somewhere it gets really cold and their transformer blows, that kind of thing. Solar storm of significance. We might see some aurora borealis. We could hear things to do with rockets and satellites and the International Space Station. And again, not all issues are bad. There might be good news coming out. We could see issues with electricity, power supplies. There could be some issues around down power lines, electrocution or lightning strikes, those kinds of things. Again, they'll be in the headlines. Doesn't mean it's happening for you. So again, you can find these in the Awake Space Astrology magazine. And then we end the week and start February with the moon in Pisces. And I'm saying even Bronny can't handle how wet it is. Now we could see cycling weather. That means like slow moving storms that don't they just won't move on. Again, this is global. Big floods, heavy rain, blizzards, freezing fog, devastating tides or rivers breach banks, levees, or dams lose integrity. Just keep your eye out on the headlines. It doesn't mean it's happening where you live. We can hear more about viruses and airborne illnesses, flus, and the start of a potential epidemic. Notice I said epidemic. I think it's not the avian flu. I think it's something else. Not that the avian flu isn't a bad thing and people need to take precautions, but I think there's like a third or fourth virus. So pay attention. Like, I know it's hard because they're not communicating these things, but seek out scientists who are talking about it, scientists or doctors, medical professionals. We could get some good news in the way of like a pharmaceutical breakthrough or, like a cure or a treatment for a disease. We could hear about pharmaceutical companies and vaccines, medications in general. We could hear about issues with ports, marine transportation. We could see an accident at port or an issue with navies. We could see an issue with a world leader, religious leader, politician, or CEO fall ill or having a sudden illness. This could be like a stroke, seizure, or poisoning. It could be all of it. It could be in both in the headlines. Might be a busy couple of days. We could see issues to do with oil, gas, oil platforms, drilling, contracts, oil tankers, and even, again, issues with big ships like Navy ships, aircraft carriers, that kind of thing, maybe submarines, things like that. We'll see tensions on the U.S.-Mexico border increase. I wrote this in December, by the way. And we might hear more about drug cartels, gangs, and state-sponsored activities. And we could see some stuff. Okay. So it starts out kind of interesting, but again, silver linings. There could be good news. Again, we could see some cures be announced. That's very exciting. I've been saying we'll see pharmacological advances. We could hear about people doing the right thing. Like, a lot of times we only hear about people doing the wrong thing. Don't blame me for the headlines. That's what the news does. But we could hear some uplifting stories. Like one I heard today was, the U.S. Air Force Academy wasn't going to be teaching about the Tuskegee Airmen or the WACs who flew, the women who flew the transportation flights and did a lot of the test flying during World War II. There was such public outrage that they're bringing the curriculum. They're not going to stop it. So there's good news in organization. Okay. People are having good conversations and choosing how they're going to take action in proactive ways. That's something good too. You'll be able to see a lot of that while the moon is in Aquarius. So again, I give what's in the headlines not to freak you out, just to give you a heads up. Alrighty, so let's talk about February. February is a little less active astrologically in some ways. Oh, you know what else I forgot? I forgot to mention before I go to February. So on the 30th, Uranus goes direct and the sun is trine Jupiter. So it's going to be a little extra. Not going to lie. And then the moon's going to be in Aquarius. And it's going to be squaring off with Uranus. And that's going to be big bada boom energy. But it doesn't mean it's big bada boom for you. You could be really creative that day. You may clean your whole house because you're pissed off. There's good stuff coming. So we end January with a bang. Uranus is direct. It just kind of flings us through. The energy is just very rapid. It'll feel very timey-wimey as we move through February for you Doctor Who fans. We've got Venus conjunct Neptune. That is magical. That is February 1st. That is an amazing day to just kind of dream into things. Great day for positive dissociation. Do your art, write your music, sing your songs, dance your dances, look for the art. There could be a really cool musical release that day or a really cool movie release. So February 1st has some good stuff in there. It could also be very, very wet. So keep your eye on the weather. Venus moves into Aries on February 3rd. This is going to we're all going to be really thinking about what we need. What do I need on an individual level? Some people say that's selfish. I'm going to say that's self-preservation. And this year, I'm going to say it's a very good idea to make sure you have your own oxygen mask on. Jupiter goes direct on February 4th. February 7th, we have Venus sextile Pluto. That can be so really positive things. Okay, so again, if you're trying to make big changes in your life, whether you want to make a physical change or you want to make a lifestyle change, something like that, Venus sextile Pluto is great for that. February 9th will be kind of interesting because we have Mars trine Saturn. Again, that could be a very, very wet day. And the sun will be conjunct Mercury. So we could see some big storms on that day. But on a personal level, it's a great day to sit down and work on something that requires discipline. It's not going to be your only shot at that because Mars is retrograde. We have a full moon on February 12th. and I'll talk about that next week. And then, of course, the sun moves into Pisces on February 18th is when the sun ingresses into Pisces. Mars goes direct on February 23rd. Okay, so that's going to be interesting, and Mercury will be trying Mars that day, so that'll be interesting, and I don't want to talk about it. Mercury will also be conjunct Saturn that day, yeah, and so and that'll be interesting, and so Mercury and Saturn will be trying Mars. And so again, it's a good day to really like you if you're setting up a structure, you can move in a flow state with that. And we end the month with a new moon on February 27th. We only have 28 days. It's very, very, very wet in February. Australia, keep an eye out for lightning strikes. I know it's been rough. You've either been having fires or floods. It's going to continue. Climate change is the thing. Do your best to stay as safe as you can. If you're in the Indian Ocean, so if you're tuning in from Madagascar, Seychelles, Mauritius, East Africa, East Africa, the Indian subcontinent, because I have listeners all those places. Be careful because there's just going to be big, big wind and rain potentially. So keep your eye out for that. Same with the Pacific Islands and the Gulf Coast in the U.S. So we could see some flooding in the Gulf Coast region, Mississippi River, Missouri River, etc. Southern Hemisphere, just ahead of the full moon. Like I'm looking at New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, Chile, Argentina, and offshore of South Africa, Madagascar, we're going to see some seismic activity. Same with Japan, Taiwan, Central China, and into Alaska, maybe British Columbia. But we could see some sizable shaking going on when it comes to seismic activity. That's really hard to predict. It's potential. I'm not going to go through all the slides. This is from my 2025 year ahead that I wrote in June of 2025. It's really important for you to make sure that you get, your KN95s. If you're vulnerable health-wise, make sure you've got the things you need to, your vitamins, all that fun stuff. Make sure you're taking care of yourself food-wise. We've got an underwater discovery, though, so we could find new species or a ruined city under the sea or a shipwreck. That's really cool. Something could be discovered off Easter Island or the northern tip of South America. Could be cool. And let's see. We could be seeing global conflict potentially look like it's going to escalate, but it could be interrupted by rough seas, rain, or flooding events. So it looks weirdly biblical in the scale of the weather. So, use your discernment. It could be also a very spiritual time where people start having visions or their psychic sensitivity is higher. Be really careful because with all this Pisces energy, it's really, really easy to go into a spiritual psychosis where you're the one and only, you've got all the answers. You're not questioning it. Or, likewise, you're seeing demons and shit. A lot of the evangelicals are experiencing spiritual psychosis most of the time. And so it's something you want to kind of be on the cautious side. People start talking 5D, new earth crap. It's rapture theology repackaged. And to me, it's the least spiritual thing you can be. Like, oh, well, those people aren't aligned. Those people are going to be left behind. Those people, blah, blah, blah. And to me, that's just bullshit, Now, on the other side, it's not about being left behind into another reality, but the people who are adaptive, innovative, solution oriented, probably going to have a better reality personally than people who are only looking at the problem, living in complaint, doom scrolling in a constant panic loop, Okay. And I'm not talking about psychology. I'm just talking about people who keep the adrenaline and the cortisol flowing and aren't like taking a step back. That is going to make it a rough ride into February. So you want to be able to find your calm, get into a yoga class or watch yoga YouTubes or something, find a group you can talk with, make art. If you really, 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 art, collage, writing, I got told by an art teacher in my freshman year of high school that if I promised to never do art again, he would pass me. Okay. At 14, that devastated me because I couldn't do photorealistic art. I'm blind. So if you asked me to do what I saw, well, I gave you my reality because I have very bad eyesight. And mine was more akin to pointillism. And that's why he was like, well, you got it wrong. And I'm like, that's how I see. You said draw what you see. Or paint what you see. And I painted the way I see. And yeah. So did a lot of damage. And so for years and years, if somebody said, oh, be creative, make art, I'm like, no, I can't do it. I'm not good at that. Like, teachers, be careful of what you tell young people. They take you very seriously. So anywho, years later, I got approached by an owner of not only an art gallery, but a sculpture park and said, hey, I was wondering, would you crochet like an art piece between 3 alder trees? And I said, yeah, I can do it on weekends and be like performance art because I don't have time to just sit and make pieces, but I'll take time off from what I do and I'll come sit. My kids were older. And it was an amazing experience to have not only, like she owned the gallery. It's an internationally renowned gallery even. And it was only supposed to be up for a couple of months and she was going to cut the elder trees down. And I called the piece Just Have Fun. Just Have Fun. Because I meditated on it because I was like, what am I going to call this piece? And I was trying to think of all these important names and nothing was coming to me. And I sat in meditation on the ground next to the trees and I'm like, what do I call it? Well, people kept asking me and I didn't have a name for it. And the thought popped into my head, Just Have Fun. I went, that's a great name. And so I crocheted the piece and I took a couple of months to do it. And actually, it took a couple of weeks, not a couple of months, like a couple of weeks in the summer. And I let nature incorporate. Next thing I know, I've got spiders weaving webs in between the things I've crocheted and little alder cones got into the work. And, it ended up being really beautiful. And she left it up for several years because I got busy. I was traveling, teaching workshops. And we just happened to run into each other a couple of years later. And she goes, oh, man, I hope you don't mind, but I got to cut down those alders I meant to a couple of years ago. And I was like, it was only supposed to be up for a couple of weeks. So I'm cool. Thank you. It was really neat. And after that, my confidence grew. Now, I don't think we always need to be pegged, but in that case, it certainly helped. But it was through the process of creating. And as I sat there crocheting, people would walk through the sculpture park and they would find me there and ask questions and enjoy the work. And I realized my real gift creatively was in dealing with people. And this is, again, oh my God, more than 12 years ago now. But it was something that really helped. And I hope you take the story as it's intended for you to understand your creativity. Lean into that as we move into February. Lean into creative endeavor, whether it's baking or cooking or perfecting a yoga pose or your ability to organize or, like physically organize a closet. Some people, like my mother is an artist at folding fitted sheets. Like she is amazing at that. That's creative. She also decorates everything for every holiday. And if you're a patron, you've probably seen the picture I put up. There are many ways to be creative, whether it's with your makeup, your hair, your nails, making posters, creating a physical zine, writing, poetry, music, filming short videos, whatever it is. singing a song, being able to cloud bust, look at the shapes in the clouds, whatever it is. Lean into that because that'll help you navigate the energy as we move into February. All right, let's do some patron shout outs. All right, here comes the next set of newest patrons. We've got Sunny, Winnie, Penny, Natalie, Stephanie, Ivy, Whiskey, Rosalind, Joanna, Taylor, Margaret, Nicole, Origami Moon, Tennille, Danielle, Nikki, Mari, Jessica, Chelsea, Claudia, Nina, Alexandra, Melia, Debbie D, but not as in Downer, Hoboy Jim, Cass, Lauren, Kate, Karen, Natalie, Elizabeth, Estelle, Audrey, Sammy, Jen, Kristen, Jennifer, Liz BT, Jacqueline, Beaks021, Mayra, Nicole, Michelle, Suzanne, Brianna, Kate, Miranda, Kayla, Jay, Maggie, Peacock and Paisley, Natalie, T. Smith, Desiree, E. Ortiz, Sarah, Sage, Laura, Claudia, Beck, Gustavo, Melanie, Valkyrie, Destiny, Grace, Melinda, Jen, Jennykins, Nicole, Chelsea, Rashanta, Noli, Angela, MM, Rochelle, DB, Shelley, Lisa, Linsberry, Shauna, Jojo, Lisa, Crystal, Dana, Jessica, Jennifer, Jess, Violet, Cassidy, Sarah, Tuna Meltdown, Molly, Terry, Andy Cece, Caleb, Jana, Hez, Carrie, Dia Darling, Iris, Callie, Sienna, Stesha, Jen, Mackenzie, Lady Grant, Megan, Lori, Jasmine, Kristen, Jordan, Celia, Shannon, Ayla, Olivia Wrights, Nori Dior, Elizabeth, Lindsay, Kate, Tracy, Christy, Tanya, Lisa, Drini Nicole, Madison, Ari, Sarah, Ebony, Tracy, Marie, Kayla, Femme Noir Trader, Bridget, Evan, Alana, Willow, Ciara, Emerald, Ariel, Emma, Shayna, Arlene, Cheryl, Rydia, Bristol, NY2KS, Kat, Paula, Tiffany, Brittany, Stephanie, Gabby, Candace, Kate, Stacy, Gemma, Natasha, Valerie, Jennifer, Natalie, Maria, Kathy, Catherine, Jennifer, Shabu323, Rebecca, Erica, and Samantha. Thank you for being patrons. All right, everybody, I have a very special guest. I have Nasser with me from Qatar. Hello, Nasser.
Hi, Laurie, or should I call you Sarah?
Sarah. Yes. So we've known each other for quite a while, long time,
Yes,
like
when
a
I was
decade
just
now.
a wee spring chicken.
Just a baby, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, so anyway, you are very entrepreneurial minded. You get lots of ideas and you're a person of service. You want things to improve and enrich people's lives. And I really love what you're doing with your company because it has to do with collaborations and connections. And I brought you onto the show to kind of talk about that because the times we live in, it's really important people know how to connect. So tell us
Yes,
about it.
thank you. I always get tongue-tied and a bit flummoxed when I have to, introduce
Hmm.
myself or talk about my business. But for me, in a very simple, like layman kind of way, I have, I think even in the world of business, it's called the hero's journey.
Hmm.
For me, it's still an ongoing and continuing. It's an
Hmm.
ongoing journey that has not complete finished. It's um, I felt perpetually and perennially like even from when we first met, like I was um, sadly and not to be dramatic or melodramatic, but condemned to kind of walk or journey this world alone. And I still straddle on the lines and struggle with, you know, if I, um, if this was my challenge in life, how do I turn it into an opportunity?
Mm-hmm.
It's a cliche, but everything I needed and I look for externally, invariably, I find out I'm doing it event myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I always felt like this odd lone bohemian, and even I like to draw comparisons, and I find that it's almost like talismans or
Mm-hmm.
things I hear in my neurodivergent mind. Things resonate with me, and it's from the most
Mm-hmm.
peculiar or unusual places, even when um I go back to and I listened to the audio recording of it was so deeply poignant, and it makes me somewhat emotional because it felt like she, in all her worldwide stardom, Britney Spears, when she was
Mm-hmm.
emancipated from her conservatorship,
Yeah.
that really, really felt like in a different way, but very similar, an extremely similar way, that felt like it resonated with my situation. She ended this phone call that's like 30, 40 minutes long on YouTube. That if you feel like a quirky, oddball introvert, and this is opposite to the perception people have that was carefully and cruelly manufactured, you know, uh, since she was young, because she was basically almost like controlled in a factory, made in a factory for
Yeah.
people's entertainment, like an
Yep.
object.
Yep.
And you know, to be suffocated for so long, and then she said, what exactly did I do wrong to be so micromanaged and controlled? And for me, it's like um innately, inherently, fundamentally, I think that's the quagmire all humans feel
Mm-hmm.
or go through. And that's what I feel. I was always divergent. And not because I sought to be, to quote someone, even when I looked up the word, when someone described it, they said, "You're such a contrarian." And I'm like, my very existence is subversive just because it defies or challenges the very austere and repressive status quo I was born
Mm-hmm.
into. But I am also such I found that I was always like this um almost like the centrifuge of talent and innovation,
Mm-hmm.
because I was faced with and still am faced with insurmountable challenges. To quote a friend of mine, Catherine, shout out to Catherine from Germany, one of the real connections I've made in my life, real ones, even though we hardly ever see each other, but like we're bonded. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's like David versus Goliath. I really was born into things much, 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 much bigger than I am.
Yeah.
Um, but um, I'll be damned if I didn't go without a fight. You know what I mean? So
Right.
and I didn't choose it. It chose me. So it's almost
Yeah.
like I have to surrender to my fate, which is that I didn't seek out. I don't like to. I get really afraid and
Mm-hmm.
terrified. I face a lot of terror, but um, it's such as my fate. It's that I have to take the bull by the horns. It's like I am someone who was put on this earth for something much, much bigger
Mm-hmm.
um, than this sort of like small provincial, like the parameters I was placed in.
Right.
Uh, so long story short, I know I can be very discursive and verbose, but
Don't worry about it. I'm enjoying. Keep going.
thank
I'm
you.
sure our
Um,
listeners are too. Go ahead.
so in a moment of sheer like and this still happens, like I always say even when I learned from Malcolm Gladwell the word
Mm-hmm.
outlier, it really
Mm-hmm.
um hit a nerve. because
Mm-hmm.
I think I seek and still yearn for to belong and to be accepted. And
Yes.
inherently, my the dispensation of who I am and where I'm from for things, for factors I have no control over, to be, I can, it's like you said, everything as above, so below, everything comes full
Yeah.
circle. I'm proud of my
Yeah.
heritage, but I
Yeah.
did not choose my lineage.
Right.
And I feel like I am beholden to things that I had no choice over. And I am
Mm-hmm.
accountable to them when they are actually effectively making my life miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's also a matter of perspective. I am exceptionally and extremely proud to be the result and the conglomeration of both my parents and their and my forefathers, and they were very
Mm-hmm.
um, revered and respected, and
Yeah.
members or figureheads in my
Yep.
country.
Yep.
Hussein Al Nama and Ibrahim Fakhra, my
Mm-hmm.
grandfathers. So I come from a
Yeah.
very respected lineage in my country,
Yeah.
but it does not transmute or translate to on the ground to my reality.
Right.
So I've always realized, because I don't conform to the straitjacket of a very rigid
Yes.
and conformist and collectivist and homogeneous, and where there is emphasis on, to quote,
Heterogeneity. Mm-hmm.
yeah, to quote Rose McGowan, it's like they do. There's even more emphasis to iron out any form of individuality here,
Yeah.
because to keep the sort of cohesion of the whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, it's sad because, you see very brilliant, extremely intelligent,
Mm-hmm.
exceptionally. It's always the people who are, become the collateral is the people who are, different, who are actually in a good way
Yeah.
suffer, and they
Yeah.
cannot submit or conform or
Yeah.
be of service in an effective,
Yeah.
functional way.
Yep.
Because they are then ostracized and sidelined.
Yeah.
So when I created Zumra, it was in a moment, it wasn't like, I'm not going to be melodramatic and say, but it really felt like I had to really dive deep into the depths of my own internal universe,
Mm-hmm.
infinite universe. And I'm like, because I watch a lot of videos, and we're in an infinitesimal speck in the grand scheme of like sometimes I wonder, like, I get sort of in the crosshairs of, religious dogma, but then you do marvel at just the expansive nature of our universe, and
Yeah.
you really do marvel at the wonder of our creator. It makes me
Yeah.
really emotional. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, it's such a shame that we have been relegated to dogma that is used to broadbeat us and to, pigeonhole
Right.
us, to make us live, to quote Irshad Manji, make us live a balkanized life.
Yeah.
It looks nothing
True.
like me. It
Yeah.
looks nothing like me. And I'm like, I am something much bigger. I am something, part of something much more. Um, and Zumra was inspired by an entire, and this is something that feels intimate to me. It's from Surah Al-Zumar, from the Quran, Zumar, which means a coterie. I've
Mm.
always been told and felt and knew that, in spite of the fact that I've always been cast away,
Mm-hmm.
I became the very thing that I could not seek and find elsewhere. I am a
Yes.
conduit and a linchpin to
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people. And it's strange, because I could not find connection, I
Mm-hmm.
became the connection.
Yeah.
Um, and I can attest to it even on a personal level. I've not expecting it, but had success in um, matchmaking people for marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, not thinking it would work, and it did for people who are very close, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And for these women specifically, really help being the conduit to which they could accomplish the gift of motherhood, because they
Right.
were worried in my
Mm-hmm.
and also finding people jobs. And ironically, I could never do that for myself.
Right. I get it.
Um,
I
so
know.
I've always felt like and I really chided my parents because you can they raised me. It's like this what is it in Christianity, the Ten Commandments? Um
Yeah.
they raised me in a very sort of um you know and this is not to uh criticize them for it necessarily, but um uh being the firstborn, I always say the firstborn is the test drive.
They call it I had a friend who was Finnish and she had five children. She called the oldest one the first pancake because the first pancake never comes out quite crispy. It's kind of floppy. And
Yeah, I would
I'm
say
the first
so.
pancake too, so I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of their choices were understandably because
Hmm.
I'm their firstborn and I am their child, but the institution of myself as a person in my adult years and my autonomous
Hmm.
self is so dichotomous to their own values and what they
Hmm.
prioritize. But
Hmm.
that's why it's always they've I am the conglomeration of things that I've been conditioned and indoctrinated to believe don't go well together, but I am actually a hybrid. You can be a tapestry of so many things that
Yes.
but I can't negotiate and decide, say, and it's a real challenge because this is inherently what manifests to what in Western clinical terminology are disorders, like how
Hmm.
do I reconcile things that are discordant, but they
Right.
they are all part of me, you know.
Yeah.
But and when Qatar, I'm from Qatar, everyone. I know this is like came a bit late, but
It's okay.
we
I'll introduce you beforehand.
yeah, we lived under the thumb of Wahhabist Saudi Arabia back then. Saudi Arabia is like
Hmm.
a whole different country now, but
Hmm.
so it's understandable if you look at the trajectory and the history, but it doesn't lessen the effect of what it does to you, onto your
Yeah.
spirit, to your mind, the
Hmm.
scars are not visible. They can be, but they're invisible, but they really, um, you know, it's like the byproduct of the times. I really was born to a time that didn't belong to me at all, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
And that's why I had to be, the rabble rouser and to fight.
Hmm.
But not intentionally so, but like I think really I inherently I was in a situation where I had to rise up to being the warrior I had to be,
Yeah.
to pave the way I could not find. There's no blueprint for someone like me, so I had to create it, and I'm not out of the woodworks because I'm still in it. I'm still in the throes of
Right.
it.
Right.
But like when you realize how ephemeral and short, and we are not even promised a full life. A full life is still extremely.
Yeah. We're very fortunate if we get to be so.
This is why I'm doing things like this. I mean, it's like you have to almost, it's like prophetic, but I'm not being grandiose about it. I don't have, but like, you just have to blaze the trail for something, even if you face the repercussions and the consequences of it, because people have reaped the benefits of things I've done. But I
Yes.
also feel like I have a duty and I owe it to myself to do it for me. So
Yeah.
long story short, with Zumra, It's like I'm a matchmaker. I'm a hive. I am the cross-pollination
Okay.
of, you know.
So you bring companies together for like joint
And
ventures or
and I
collaboration.
exactly, and interestingly, people I think sometimes say it with in a very dismissive, like,
Hmm.
what is another synonym for that? Like, but I have been exceptionally adept and
You're
frighteningly
like a
good
liaison, a liaison
and a broker, yeah.
and a
So whether
broker,
it's B2C or
impresario.
B2B, yeah, B2B or
Mhm.
B2C, like
Yeah.
but I could never because I've always operated, and this happened in a very organic way, so it wasn't premeditated. I was always more of a social entrepreneur, socialpreneur,
Hmm.
but I'm trying to, for me, I've always done things in a roundabout way. I put because
I
again,
see
being
you there. Me too. Go ahead.
yeah, and I think it's the same. Like there's maybe that we're synonymous in that way. You found success later, much
Hmm.
later in life,
Hmm.
but that gives me inspiration to
Oh
keep
no,
going.
I had it very young and then I lost it. And then I had to get it back.
Wow.
Hmm.
I wouldn't say I ever had it because I was swimming. I was snowed under and swimming upstream.
Well, you were facing many different challenges comparatively. Like I had mine, but circumstantially, I think it's remarkable that you're doing what you're doing, the way you're doing it.
I've my circumstances and for your discerning, wonderful, intelligent viewers and listeners, because they're, as per my understanding, they are an extension of Laurie, and Laurie is like a savant. Um, I think you all can read between the lines. I was really always trying to dig myself out of um being buried, even born into, and this is not something a lot of people can comprehend or compute because
Hmm.
people who know me or even don't really know me, but what they witness and they see at face value Nasser who looks good, who takes care of himself, but
Hmm.
they don't realize that um,
The inner
I
turmoil.
the inner turmoil and that the this I wouldn't say obsession, um uh
Drive?
this visceral or this need to my for my facade, because I think sometimes when you live in turmoil and chaos and live in um you live in like this tornado or torpedo of a life,
Yeah.
to control my external facade is really the only way I feel like I have any
Hmm.
autonomy. And I had to undo a lot of the damage that was done, I did to myself, but only because, I really was born into, I mean, I don't know what it's analogous to, but it feels like I was really born. It almost feels surreal, like it's removed from me, like
Hmm.
uh like that movie with Keanu Reeves. It's one of my favorites, hugely underrated. Constantine. I always felt
Oh, Constantine was a good movie. Yeah.
it was.
Hmm.
And um the scene where he goes to the underworld, that really felt like
Hmm.
my life
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
I felt like I was conceived to be bludgeoned, to feel like I should be annihilated.
Hmm.
And I'm not being melodramatic or saying, but like that's always, and people cannot seem to reconcile because I have a very acerbic and gregarious part of me, but it's not really separate or divorced from the very, very, very painful
Mhm.
life I live, because it's interesting. I'm also Laurie and I, we talked a little bit, guys, before we went live, but I actually find that even with Laurie now, I really meet people where they are on their intellectual bandwidth. So
Mhm.
I am kind of somewhere who can oscillate, and I struggle to say these things, like even my vocabulary now, it matches, Laurie's vernacular, because I'm t talking to her, and I don't know if there's a technical word for it. It's like
You're highly intuitive and you're highly sensitive. And
highly
so
sensitive.
you can highly sensitive, highly intuitive, and you just kind of that's why it's really important for how you enter into community, being around a certain vibe, basically. If you need to be somewhere you can elevate yourself, and finding authentic connections can be a challenge for you where
Yeah,
you're living.
it
Yeah.
it very much is, and also interestingly, because I don't know if it's because I crave real, authentic connections that are not
Hmm.
underlaced with a hidden agenda, which
Hmm.
is contrary to really the landscape and the environment I live in my country. Um, and I'm not generalizing, but generally speaking, really generally speaking, um, it's bizarre to me that I am such an outlier or unusual in just being, and I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm not also putting myself on a pedestal or saying I'm better. I'm, but just that I'm real warts and all, but
Hmm.
that's not that's really not the case here, and or even when I travel, I think also I have this it really feels like a um to quote someone, I don't know if there's another synonym for it. I'm a door opener, you
Hmm.
know. So I find that even much later on, and sometimes it can even be unconscious or not intentional. A lot of people who have created and cultivated friendships that seem or are ostensibly in the beginning or during seem authentic are still predicated on the benefit
Yeah.
which they get in dividends through me
Hmm.
from my
Hmm.
connections,
Hmm.
whether it's because I speak very well and I communicate very well, and I can really navigate really very diverse and versatile groups of people
Hmm.
anywhere. The upside to the downside of being and nothing anywhere is that I am everything everywhere. And that again dovetails into why I created Zumra, because I basically really essentially had to create the
The
community
solution for
at
you.
the time.
Hmm.
I had to create a solution because I was handed a verdict for something I never chose.
Right. Right. So that is
So,
a very brave thing. So do you have any plans for Zumra this year, or are you just letting things unfold and seeing how it goes?
no, definitely. I mean, definitely would like for it to become, because Zumra for me still behaves and operates like a community-driven
Hmm.
um, for operation. But for me, it's time to scale up. It's time to take it to level, to the next level
Hmm.
because, I've been fastidious,
Hmm.
and with my events and creating
Hmm.
events of value and disseminating information to a lot of
Hmm.
entrepreneurs to the point where people think I am a business development advisor, and I didn't realize maybe
Hmm.
I'm, but it's just
Hmm.
me uh really sharing the my own journey and what I've been through.
And that's what a business developer does. Because it's based off the best business developers. It's not what they learned in school, it's what they learned from experience. And I think so. You do like entrepreneurial events where people can come and learn, whether speakers or workshops. Is that some of the community events that you do?
Yes, and specifically, like to
Hmm.
your point, to elucidate to the listeners, the last one was, and it wasn't easy, but thankfully, like I've seen the value of what I've done for so long and just being so relentless. To quote
Hmm.
Jessica Alba, you think I'd be quoting like some, I don't know, philosopher, but like Jessica Alba's like saying having this relentless pursuit. It's not giving up in spite of all of the obstacles, right?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
basically I was thankfully afforded, which is a huge milestone, by the management of the Park Hyatt, which is a universally renowned and
Great.
in Qatar, one of
Hmm.
the more prestigious establishments and hotels, one of their venues to host one of my events, and I created
Well,
literally the speakers I chose were all in my network. It was an auditor because I was struggling to understand what are my responsibilities to my company, and I'm not someone, and I've realized a lot of people, especially small and medium enterprises, really struggle in that way, and they don't know, they just can't be held accountable to what they don't know. So
right.
um, and it's like, it's like in the US, it's now similar now. This is relatively recent for us. It's like tax returns and filing your tax. Um,
Really, you don't just do zakat anymore, huh?
no, like now for companies, we have to do the tax filing, ضريبة. We call it
Oh,
ضريبة.
well.
Yeah. So things are changed. And I'm like, this is, and and my auditors and accountants became, and I approached them because they saw that I have a huge network, and they're primarily
Mm-hmm.
wanting to target small and medium enterprises. So
Mm-hmm.
I basically utilized, in a very 360 kind of way, this event to highlight, all of the different pit stops you have to do as an entrepreneur. I brought an accountant slash auditor to talk about
Mm-hmm.
what you need to do to safeguard yourself. I brought lawyers who are actually entrepreneurs, a lawyer, sorry, or
Great.
someone created a legal um um you know uh, uh legal platform called Nasih. Nasih means advisor.
Oh,
Uh
nice.
and it's one of the entrepreneurs I have in my network. And they're incubated at one of the Qatar Science and Technology Park. Shout out to them.
Nice.
Co-founders is my cousin, so they're like this young, really hardworking, ambitious group of guys who are doing
Mm-hmm.
streamline and innovate a solution to a problem because they basically created this app which they're releasing soon to help people seek out at a standardized and reasonable rates like legal advice by also
Oh, very
uh,
cool.
yeah, in Qatar because navigating the legal landscape has been hell for me as well. And that's
Well,
because
you
of
you only know what you know.
yeah, exactly. And also sadly I realized in the process and my journey and in navigating and trying to pursue someone a legal counsel, a lot of them operate on a very capitalistic basis. So
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to uh really truly sadly even though they're supposed to be the vanguards of like protecting
Justice, right? Mm-hmm.
but they're actually
They've
just
had
trying,
some hours.
they're very unscrupulous and
Yeah.
they actually capitalize on your ignorance and what you don't know of the law.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you end up
Mm-hmm.
paying them to just get into this rabbit hole of like more problems. So this was a great way for me to highlight this app, which basically is going to revolutionize and I think hopefully in doing so stabilize things, and Qatar and beyond. And last but not least, I actually also brought someone in trademarking, which people didn't
Great.
expect because I had to trademark Zumra's logo, which again was my own story and narrative, and it was inspired the Quran, the geometric Islamic patterns, and I'm like, I don't want someone to steal this. So I've partnered up with all of them and became their strategic partner and brought them to this event and titled it Legal and Financial Safeguards at the
Great.
park head and made it, free so that people could extract the full value of the event. And it became very successful. And they were like, we didn't, a lot of the, even some of the attendees or people who came were there to represent their respective workplace. Like
Wow. Cool.
and they said we came to, because we were instructed to attend to cover the event, and we left actually because we learned a lot for us, for ourselves personally, and we didn't. I didn't think so. I actually feel like this is Nasser's doing some important stuff, but
Hmm.
um, I would like for it to change, and I actually would like to have the support of the the people in the ecosystem, whether it's incubators or public,
Hmm.
sector stakeholders, which sadly are not supporting. Um,
Well, become the cool kid, and then they'll start asking you if they can play, and you'll be like, we'll see if we have room. Latha
ex
latha shpai.
exactly, and that's apparently what is happening because some were they were befuddled and they were bewildered, like you're doing this solely as one person. We thought you had the support of this institution, and you were literally an entire crew. And I'm like, an operation. I'm like, no, I don't have it, and I'm like, that's again, I
Hmm.
just have to trust that maybe it's something bigger and more divine. Maybe it's something like I don't, this is, I have to be my own everything and savior, and I have to blaze the
Yeah,
trail and,
yeah.
you know,
I know that one. We become the solutions we seek. We become our
own lifeboats.
yeah, yeah. And so but sometimes lifeboats meet up on the ocean. Sometimes we meet up at port. Sometimes we'll connect as we resonate. And that's that interconnected. We don't need massive audiences. We don't need massive networks. We need
I always say,
solid, good, high quality.
exactly, to your point, to emphasize it further, I always say it's the quality in the quantity.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's like we have a saying, صديق الكل ليس I don't want to be everyone's friend.
Yeah,
I don't.
no, I say that a lot. I'm not here for everybody. There's a lot of people who are not going to like the dishes I'm serving, and that's okay. I don't want everybody to like me.
And I don't want to
And
live in a world where I am liked and I like everyone. I feel like this is why
hmm.
it's what
Hmm.
like this is, I think, the pathology of trying to um whittle us down to the same uniform thing. Like I
Hmm.
wish things were different here where I am, where they understood the value of allowing people to be and actually be able to live and differently and not chide and punish them for it.
Well, I'm afraid even in this one, we're going backwards a little bit, but
I see
sometimes
that.
that's what
And
it
I feel,
takes
and
to
for what it's worth, and
evolve.
maybe it's like a glimmer, maybe I'm planting, or maybe
Mhm.
I would hope the listeners really don't relinquish what you have in that way because you have something that someone else somewhere else wants. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I don't think they grasp the full veracity and the value of like, like you might not have a lot of, but like you have the most important thing that cannot be measured. It's priceless, like, and
But yeah, but what you are showing is regardless of circumstance, you can ride the cosmic wave.
yeah.
And it's a journey, and you can't control always the outcome, but you can keep the destination in mind. Sometimes you go off course a little bit and then you come back on. Oh, Nasser, I'm so glad to reconnect with you. It's been so long, and I'm so proud of all the work you've been doing. And I don't think you were too verbose at all. I very much enjoyed listening to you, and you contributed so meaningfully and beautifully to the podcast this week. Thank you
Thank you
for
for
being
having
here.
me. I wish you continuous, constant growth onwards and upwards.
Oh, I want to thank Nasser for being my guest this week. I've known Nasser since 2016, and we communicated before through writing, but we met in 2016 when we were in LA. And to observe each other's growth, when you haven't seen each other in a long time, we've texted now and then. It's just a beautiful thing. And he's such a heartfelt person. And I just really enjoyed having a conversation with him. I hope you enjoyed it too. I want you to remember the silver linings. I want you to remember the silver linings. Okay. As much as there's a lot of stuff up on deck, and they're just going to keep throwing shocking things. They're going to keep saying shocking things. They're going to do shocking things because they are trying to debilitate us. Okay. They want us worn out into forced compliance. It was going to come one way or another, different packaging, different delivery, but forced compliance was going to be up on deck because society needs to reshape. And that means everybody has to participate at some level. There is nothing wrong with being involved in the local level. And in fact, Pete Buttigieg, when asked how to deal with what was going on and what were the solutions, basically said, he goes, you got to stop reacting to the shock tactics because that's exactly what they're done. They're done to debilitate you. And he pointed out, he goes, people who have worked in local, county, and state organizing or politics are going to be better adept at dealing with that because they're more used to it than the people in Washington D.C. They want to get up on their soapboxes, make impassioned speeches. Great, we've now pointed out the problem. But if you're having to deal with it on the daily and you have to fix problems on the ground, if you're dealing with the water mains, if you're dealing with the actual power supply, if you're dealing with the actual education, if you're dealing with senior services, then you are used to having to pivot and adapt. And that's where the power is going to be. It's going to be on the ground in the local area. Now, I get it. Not everybody can physically be involved, but you can work with your own solutions, seeking support networks or seeking community in ways that is meaningful for you, or sitting down and working on projects that work for you. It is making sure you're secured. You need to make sure your own oxygen mask is on. We cannot save drowning people without the right equipment. Okay, so if you don't know how to swim, jumping in and martyring yourself isn't going to help, right? If you can't breathe, you can't help anybody else if there's a problem going on. So that's why you put your oxygen mask on first. It doesn't make you a bad person. It is nothing to feel guilty about. Guilt is also a depletion of energy. Okay. Guilt, shame, and blame are debilitating. And it's okay to feel it. Like we all feel it, but don't luxuriate in it. That's been my message for a long time. Feel the feelings, identify them, and then look at what is the next logical step you can take. And I'm also going to say, it's okay to laugh. It's okay to see the ridiculousness in a situation. It's okay to have a good day when other people aren't. Okay? It's okay. And with that, my friends, I hope you have a beautiful week. And I look forward to talking to you next week where I run you down through the nitty gritty of February.